let's move on. We got 9. So these are we got one play-in team. We got Orlando, could potentially be a play-in team. Let's talk about a play-in team that might a definite play-in team. And Brad, why don't you start us off with number 9?
Definite playing team, the Brooklyn Nets. Number 9.
Ooh. Oof.
Yeah. I
Not far
really.
off you. I'm not far off you, Brad, but you're a little harder on them than I am.
The
Yeah,
Brooklyn
much, though.
Nets. All right.
It's probably because of Steve Nash. I just don't think.
Ow! No, don't be a Kevin Durant right now, Brad. Come on.
Wait, bro,
Steve
like
Nash.
he can't. He has no schemes, and his rotations are atrocious. Like in
There's
that
no
Buck
players who
series,
want to play basketball.
okay, but in that Buck series, that's fair. But in that Buck series 2 years ago, he could have had much better rotations.
I agree with you. Actually, he was getting outcoached by bad coaching, Bud. That
exactly, yeah. Like Mike Budenholzer is not a coach that outcoaches people. That's pretty like bad from Steve Nash. But I mean, yeah, they added T.J. Warren, Ben Simmons, Royce O'Neal, Edmund Sumner, Markieff Morris. It's kind of like a hodgepodge, you know. None of these guys. There's no chemistry on that team. KD and Kyrie haven't been healthy the last 2 seasons. KD's body is kind of breaking down before our eyes, you know. Played 50 games last year, 30-something the year before that, and then didn't play the year before that. And then Kyrie, the whole vax thing, he's not vaccinated. So if this guy catches COVID, he's going to miss a bunch of games just like that. So, and then there's Ben too. Mentally and physically, we don't know how he is.
Well, we'll see
especially
if he's
mentally.
Call of Duty.
Oh my gosh, he needs to stay off the streams and go shoot some jump shots.
Him and Kyler grabbing some games together.
Oh my god,
some squads. I had New York at number 9, so that doesn't apply anymore. If the Knicks, we accepted their 11, I honestly think it's Chicago is the next play-in team. I really don't. I just don't think they're going to be very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, like when I look at Chicago, I think Pete, you kind of nailed it on the head Pete, you nailed it on the head. Like with the Lonzo injury, we have no idea when Lonzo's going to come back. And that is, again, I've talked about it before with his younger brother, you know, Lonzo is a difference maker for any organization. And the fact that they lost him for what seems like going to be like the first couple months now is a huge blow. Because again, I'm not a huge fan of Kobe White. I think that he's okay, but he's not necessarily the best. I think that he is more of like a scoring guard than really like a playmaker, where I feel like Lonzo is more of a playmaker. You could maybe see Ayo Dosunmu as well, but Dosunmu is also someone I think who's more of a scoring guard. And then of course,
good though. He's
nice.
Good,
and I like him.
Good. I love him. Yeah,
but they need someone that's going to facilitate for guys like DeRozan, for guys like Zach LaVine. And you know, we need to see what Patrick Williams is going to do this year. Does he take that next step? Because I think for the Chicago Bulls to really be a good team, he's going to really need to take that step up, because we know what Vucevic is. He has limitations. We know his style of play. We know what type of player he can be. So I think really to me, the X factor is going to be Patrick Williams. Does he take that step up? Can he be that guy that takes that next step to help out those guys in LaVine and DeRozan? And Lonzo, I mean, he's gonna have to be a guy that takes advantage of his matchups, and that's something that I want to see this year when it comes to him, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, perfect universe for this team, like you said. The best situation is Patrick Williams takes the step forward. I mean, I said it when we were going into that draft a couple years ago. Perfect world for him is like Kawhi Light. You know, like he's just this super long, versatile defender. He can shoot a little bit. He's just not been healthy, like hardly at all so far in his tenure in the NBA. And even then, when he is healthy, he's just offensively kind of a dud. Like he just doesn't present much at all as far as scoring. I just don't like their guard play. That's really what it boils down to. I think like their guard rotation is so weak without Lonzo. And that's not, no shade at Caruso. I like Caruso a lot. Bernie, we had long debates about the Lakers letting Caruso go. I thought it was a terrible mistake when they did it, and I think it's proved to be accurate. Like, he was so critical to their championship success, that bubble run, and they just did nothing to replace him. But that being said, you have Kobe White, you have Dalen Terry, who I like Dalen Terry. I think he was a good pick for them. I just don't think it's going to lead to much this first season. He needs a little bit more time. But their guards are so weak, and I've had my ups and downs with Zach LaVine. I told you in a stream not that long ago too, Bernie. I think he's the guy I had the biggest I came around on Zach LaVine the most of probably anybody in the NBA over the last 5 years. I thought he was awful, for his first few years in the NBA, but I just don't think him and DeRozan can do it alone without Lonzo or somebody to facilitate a little bit more. And I said it earlier too, but I think Vucevic is just not that guy. He's just not that guy. He's been not good since he's been in Chicago.
Yeah, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Bulls 8th, so I'm not too far off from you guys. My pushback would be I think that Billy Donovan with Patrick Williams, I think Billy Donovan doesn't include him in the offense. He doesn't make him like a focal point. And
yeah,
Patrick Williams is handicapped offensively, but he's also just standing in the corner 99% of the time watching Zach and DeMar go to work.
Yeah.
I think Goran Dragic was a good pickup for their guard play because, yeah, it's really, really bad, but he's a good steady point guard who can lead a second unit. And I think Andre Drummond was actually a decent pickup off the bench. He can kind of go in and do the things Vooch can't, like bump with big centers like Embiid and rebound the basketball. And, Vooch can rebound, but, like at the expense of defense and slowing down your whole team because has to get up the floor. But yeah, their roster is pretty bad without Lonzo. I just have high hopes for Zach and DeMar offensively leading the charge.
Yeah. I mean, I
think Dragic is beyond washed personally. So
he gave them good minutes he gave the Nets good minutes in the playoffs.
I don't know if they were good minutes in my opinion. I thought it was pretty suspect.
I mean, he's what, 35,
34,
36?
36.
I mean he's old.
36.
But it's kind of, to me, it's kind of the similar. I think he needs to play the composite role that he does for Denver. It's kind of like that same role that Goran Dragic has to play now, kind of like that facilitator, get the other guys their stuff, and then he can
spots. Yeah,
and then he can kind of take those layups or those things if they try to take away the three. So again, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think, like I said, I think Bulls I had at 9. I think Brad, you said he had him at 8. And then Pete, I think you had him at 11. So again,
I had him 11. Yeah, 9's fine though. I think that's reasonable.
I mean, I just think that this roster, with especially with the start that they're gonna lose without those guys, I think it's gonna be tough. Pete, who do you have at number 8? Because Brad went crazy and put the Brooklyn Nets as a play-in team number 9. So who do you got?
So I have 7 and 8 are like almost interchangeable, like as far as what I think they're going to be this season, like in terms of winning. I think they're both right there. I ended up leaning the Toronto Raptors at number 8. And spoiler, I have the Nets at 7, but I don't think they're that much better than Toronto. I have Toronto at 8. I don't really think they improved very much this offseason necessarily, but I do like the guys they have on their team a lot. Like, I don't even have to talk about Scotty Barnes. I think Scotty Barnes is incredible. He's only going to get better. But Pascal Siakam is the guy that I think is super underrated with the squad. He had such a good year last year, and I don't know if I heard hardly anybody talk about it. Like, he was legitimately deserving of his All-NBA placement. He was so good for big stretches of last season. It's just their roster is just really weak. I don't like their bigs very much. Outside of Siakam is pretty weak, and OG's fine. OG, I just am so frustrated with hearing him be like, "Get ready, this is the year. This is the OG leap year." It's every year for 5 years, man. I would love to see him score more than 16 points a game. I would love to see it. I think he's super talented. It's just I just don't think that's the guy he is. I think he's a solid role player on a good team, right? It's just that's not good enough to be, the third best player on one of these teams. So they're an interesting squad. I don't know what they're going to be really, because most of what they are is going to depend on how good Scotty Barnes is. That was the same thing as last season. It was Siakam and Barnes, but whatever Barnes is as a creator for this team, he needs to be that point forward, just continue to what he was so good at coming into the NBA, into that draft, was his playmaking, how big he was, his court vision. If they just keep relying on him as their point guard, basically, I'm very interested to see what they're going to be. It's just there's not enough around him yet.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that and I had them at 8 as well. I think that this team, I don't think is as talented as the other teams. I think that as coaching, I think Nick Nurse is a good coach, and probably got the most out of some of these guys.
Top 5 in the NBA.
Um, and so I look at guy like I think this might be a year where like Malachi Flynn gets more minutes and gets to, we've seen him over the summer like really ball out in these summer leagues, and I know it's summer league, but that's gonna mean something if he's scoring that many points. That means that he can actually play in this league. And so I kind of hope that they use him a little bit more to get it going. Gary Trent Jr., good player. But I agree with you. I think the guards to me are not my. I think that they need someone else to help out with Van Vliet. And I know Gary Trent's a good player. I'm not taking anything away from him. But, I think, especially if you're going to have kind of the Scotty Barnes, OG, Pascal kind of be your centerpiece of the players that you're kind of building around. I think that you also need to get some guard players that also are in that same age range that can also grow with this team. And when they eventually have a roster that kind of supports them for a big playoff run, I think that's when we're going to see it.
Yeah.
But I do like Christian Koloko. I think he could grow and be their starting center at some point. He played really well at Arizona. I enjoyed watching him. He was kind of one of those bigs that really intrigued me. Kind of seeing him in that offense that they ran in Arizona, which is kind of like the similar Gonzaga stuff. Obviously, that stuff doesn't really work in the NBA, but I think that if he can really improve that 3-point shot, Koloko can definitely kind of be in that Isaiah Stewart type of role where he's just like a big body, sets really nice screens for their guards, and kind of have him run to the rim and catch oops or get rebounds. I think he'll be a really good player. It's just this roster to me doesn't scream excitement. It just kind of screams you're going to be very solid. And so, we see teams that are in the top 4 for both conferences, like what type of roster they have. And they just don't have that type of roster, in my opinion. That's why I have them at 8 for me.
We didn't talk about Van Vliet too. Van Vliet is still really solid. I mean, Van Vliet did have a good year last year too, and he always will be underrated, even by myself. I tend to forget Van Vliet exists, even though he is a championship player. He's a solid player. But the one thing before I let you go, Brad, I would be remiss if I didn't stay on brand and just bring this up because it's been in the news this week. They are looking at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm just throwing that out there. He's kind of the perfect player for this team.
Wow, that would actually be good. Wow,
he's pretty perfect, man. He slides right into the 2, even if you don't think he's a point guard. That works perfect for this team because then you just keep letting Scotty Barnes control the ball, and you have Shai as your off-ball kind of guard play defender. I think that would be so nice for this team. They'd be crazy versatile.
Before I give my little Raptors analysis, who would they trade for Shai? Do you think they would give up Fred and OG?
It would have to be OG and somebody. OG would be the person that would be going for sure. It would probably be Van Vliet, but it would be mostly picks, I think, if they did it.
Yeah.
I don't think they have enough to get it done, honestly. It's more just the fact that it's even out there in the news as much as it is. I've seen that everywhere this week, so it's clearly being talked about by somebody.
That would be a really good look for them. I would love the Raptors if that happened.
I mean, I would be beyond pissed personally, but I think it would be I think it's a great choice for him. I'd be happy for him, I guess.
It'd be a fun team to watch. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I have the Raptors 7, but I think that their defense with all the length they have so many long wings, and even Fred is a good defender for how short he is. I think Nick Nurse, like you said, Bernie, he gets the best out of those guys. Losing Otto Porter already kind of sucks. I know he deals with injuries, but the season didn't even start, and he has a hamstring injury. It's going to keep him out for a while. Yeah. But they did add Josh Jackson, who, I know he's a failed lotto pick, didn't live up to what he was supposed to be, but he is a good wing,
Yeah.
He can play defense, he plays hard, and so he'll slot right into their system perfectly.
Their role players are fine. Kem Birch, Chris Boucher, those guys are solid. It's just not much.
I think their bench is super weak. I saw a report that they're deciding between like Delano Banton, Julian Champagne, and someone else to fill out their roster. And it's like those guys are, fringe NBA players. But they do have one of the strongest starting fives in the East, minus their center, I think. I think the talent with Fred, Siakam, Scotty, OG, and Gary is really, really high. So, yeah, that'll win them games. But other than that, this roster is pretty bad.
One thing, too, I'm always big on organization stuff. I mean, if you were to rank like coach, GM, like combos, I think you're hard pressed to say there's any combo better than Nick Nurse and Masai. I just don't think I don't even think it's close, really. Like, just if you combine both of them together into one front office type of situation, they're 2 top 5 easily, top 3 probably.
I might have said Brad Stevens and Udoka last year, but
Brad, I almost made the same joke. I held it in. I was going to say a week ago, maybe Ime is talking different, but
Oh, no.
sorry, Bernie.
What about your number 7? Who you guys got? I mean, Brad, you kind of gave your number 7. Pete, do you have a number 7 for you?
I have Brooklyn at number 7. I think Brooklyn is going to have a nightmare season again. I just don't think it's going to go well for them. The only reason I had to put them at 7 is the talent is just so good, obviously, like there's not even much to talk about. Like, if it's going well, like, clearly they're going to be winning games. That's not a question. And God, for like, as much as I hated a lot of their offseason moves, I think they had one of the worst off seasons probably ever in NBA history from a personnel standpoint, but they did add good players. That's the thing I can't get away from. Like, TJ Warren is legitimately good. No, it was bad. The personnel stuff, Bernie. That that stuff, borderline one of the worst off seasons of all time. But at the end of the day, they didn't make any terrible, terrible moves. They didn't send KD away for a bag of peanuts. They didn't do that. Kyrie is still Kyrie. Like, he's still going to be good. It's just,
how many games are going to play? That's the question.
It doesn't mean they're exactly, Bernie. I totally agree with you, because it's whether it's health or not. Do we know he's going to play? Do we know Ben Simmons is going to play? I just don't know. I don't know that to be true. But if they're playing, which as of right now, tentatively they are, this team is solid, man. They have one of the better rosters in the East, in my opinion. It's just the coaching is definitely a little suspect, and you do have to wonder, like, what if things go wrong for like 2 straight weeks? What happens? Who freaks out first? Who makes the panic move and says, you know what, I'm Kevin Durant, I'm not playing anymore. Get me out of here. I changed my mind. I am ready to go. Right? I think that's totally in play if it goes poorly. But they have lots of good role players, man. I mean, Seth Curry is healthy. Joe Harris is back healthy. I've never been a big Joe Harris person, but at least he gives you some shooting out on the, outside. Patty Mills is still there on a good contract. Markieff Morris, Royce O'Neal. Markieff Morris dropped the quote of the offseason. Did you guys see that?
That was hilarious. Yeah.
Broke up with my wife a few times, but we're still together. I mean, that's one of the best quotes in NBA history, probably.
Real vet. They need him in the locker room.
Yeah.
Ben Simmons. I liked what Steve Nash said about Ben Simmons. I mean, I think that in a perfect situation, that's if you have Ben Simmons, you have to be okay with him being Ben Simmons. Like, you can't, it's the fit in a square peg into a round hole type of situation. Use him what he's good at and just have him as, this weird down low center guard
social media
combo.
Expert. Is that
yeah, dude? Put him on your esports team.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, here's the thing. I also have the Brooklyn Nets at that. I it's tough because I was gonna put them at 6, but just remembering the whole ordeal. I mean, the thing that really gets me for both of these guys is the fact that both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving picked Steve Nash at the beginning of their career here in Brooklyn to be the coach, right? And
Wait, did they pick him?
yes,
Co-coaches.
I thought that was a Sean Marks.
Nope.
Kevin.
They wanted Steve.
They wanted Steve. Kevin Durant did, at least, and so I
He
think.
was with
Are
the
you guys
Warriors.
sure? I thought they wanted Ty Lue. I thought Marks and the owner just said they wanted Steve, and then Katie and Kyrie just co-signed it. Like, oh yeah, like we don't need a coach. We all coach together.
I'm pretty sure wasn't Steve Nash with the Warriors in the last couple of years that KD was there.
He was a consultant for them.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was. They
They
built a relationship, and that was kind of the nail in the coffin as far as bringing Steve Nash to Brooklyn. I think that was KD's choice.
Yeah, I mean, we we
Wow.
know, we know that KD has kind of had these type of kind of signings that haven't really worked out very well. I mean, the big thing for me, and I know that Steve Nash is not a very good coach. I said before in previous streams he probably should have taken a lesser, maybe not a lesser job is the right word, but he definitely should have taken a lower job where it's not as stressful and kind of grow with the team to work
Yeah.
on his coaching. And I think that would have been a lot better than where he's at right now, which is let's throw you into the fire. Because really, if we think about that series with the Milwaukee Bucks, that was really D'Antoni. I really do think D'Antoni was the coaching that team because he was one of the assistants for Nash at that point.
He
And
was.
and so
Yeah.
I think that's where I look at this Brooklyn Nets team and I said, okay, this was more so a D'Antoni team than a Nash team. Even though Nash played for D'Antoni, you could say what you want about that. But in terms of the roster, the biggest issue for me, one, how many games is Kyrie going to play? Not only because of his status of his health, but also the status of, you know, is he going to be wanting to play basketball? It just seems to me that there's times where Kyrie Irving is all in on it, and there's times where Kyrie Irving is out of it. And I think that he needs to take a little bit of ownership in terms, and I'm not saying to blame him fully or anything like that, but he needs to take some accountability for the fact that, for the last couple years, he hasn't really played over 70 games, I think, ever in his career, maybe one time. And
Early Cavaliers, not like his first 2 seasons, but yeah, I think that first year with LeBron, he played most of the games that year.
yeah. And so to me, that's something that needs to be addressed. I think the Ben Simmons stuff, I think Ben Simmons, another guy that hasn't really shown accountability for what he did in Philadelphia. I mean, I know, Brad, you're a Joel Embiid fan, and you could probably talk about this whole thing a little bit better. But, Ben Simmons didn't come to show up in that 76er series. And again, I've talked about Ben Simmons ad nauseum on this channel, and it's not, and I don't really want to talk about him and kind of beat a dead horse and things like that. But to me, like, Ben Simmons has to take some ownership and accountability as well. I think that that's the problem with this team, is that all the guys on this roster do not take accountability to grow as a unit and move into really, because to be honest with you, this team should be top 3, top 4 in the NBA. There's no reason why a team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons, all-stars and all-NBA players, should be in a play-in game or, low playoff team. But they find themselves here because I really do think that they don't hold themselves accountable for some of the stuff that they do. And again, Sean Marks and the owner are not, and Steve Nash himself are not absolved of their issues as well. But I do think that those guys, all 6 of them or 7 of them, however many you want to include, including the GM, the owner, the head coach, and the 3 players, they really need to sit down together and figure out, are we all going to buy in this year? And if not, somebody's got to go. And if you got to get rid of the owner, you got to get rid of the GM, get rid of those guys. If you got to,
they're not going.
If you got to trade Kyrie, if you got to trade Kyrie Irving to the Lakers, trade him to the Lakers. Because
Please and thank you.
Because I think that's really what's going to help the team grow, is by getting rid of some of the stuff and some of the guys that aren't really being held to the standard that they need to be. And I think that they do have some decent pieces. I like Seth Curry. Joe Harris is hit or miss at times. Patty Mills is a great role player. Cam Thomas, I'd love to see a little bit more of him moving forward. I know he's more of a scoring guard, so that's kind of an issue for.
He scored. That's all he does. He's good though. I like him, but he can't do anything else. Unfortunately.
And then you have Royce O'Neal, who I think is a kind of a decent 3-and-D guy. Not saying he's the best. And then
probably,
you have,
other than Ben Simmons, the best defender on their team now.
Yeah, and then you have Claxton again. The problem with this team, just from a basketball standpoint, is the rebounding, because they continuously get out rebounded in the offensive end. They can't get any second chance points with their bigs, because Kevin Durant's not going to go and get you an extra offensive possession. The only one that really is going to do that is Claxton, and I don't even think he does that very well. And so
he doesn't. He's too skinny.
Claxton's not very good. Yeah, Bernie, you're hitting on the biggest thing with this team. Because the chemistry to me is the number one issue, and there's people who will forever not understand that plays a huge role in basketball. So they'll look at the roster and they'll say, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, this team's top tier. No, they have no bigs. This team has no bigs. Their starting center is a second or third string center on most top tier teams in the league. Claxton. He's just not that great. He's not big. He's so skinny. He can't muscle anybody out of any situation. And it's kind of the same situation that they were in the last 2 years. I mean, people will look at, the minor production that Claxton has. What's his name? Bruce Brown, right? Same situation where they look at what Bruce Brown is doing and they say, wow, Bruce Brown is super solid. No, you have these guys who are like, planets drawing all the gravity of the defense. So of course they're going to get open looks and have some success. It just doesn't mean they're that good making situations. So the bigs are terrible for this team. And, beyond even just the bigs, it's the what happens if Kyrie doesn't play playmaking wise? That's the thing too, I think, is because a lot of their guards are not necessarily ball handling playmakers. They're shooters who just stand in the corner or go off to the side and move off ball to get open looks. So I don't really like the way their roster is constructed, but in a perfect world, I know I keep saying that for this team because that's what it's going to take for them to move up these ranks, I think. I'd be really interested to see them play Ben Simmons at the 5.
I was just about to say that. That's the best
Ben
lineup.
Simmons as Draymond. Just make him Draymond. That's all.
You need him to play the 5.
I've been saying that for years. Play Ben Simmons as Draymond Green, and they finally have him in a perfect situation where he should be the Draymond Green. He should be their defensive anchor, move everywhere, guard any of their best players on the other team, but especially their bigs. And then just have him be your ball handler mostly. That's what it is. That's their best situation.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're going to do it though. I don't think they're creative enough to do it.
That's my issue with Steve Nash is he wouldn't experiment like that,
If they announce tomorrow Ben Simmons starting 5 point center, whatever it is, I would probably move them up the ranks a little bit. I would be so interested to see what it is. And I think it would be so weird and hard to defend that I think it would work. I just don't think they're capable. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Brad. That's where I would get on Steve Nash. Like, he shouldn't have taken such a high-level job straight away. But beyond just maybe not being the greatest coach, it's the creativity. Because the last thing, and this is what really made me settle on them at 7-8, they were atrocious in the playoffs against the Celtics. And I know they only lost by like 3 total points the first 2 games of that series. But they got swept, man. It didn't look close against the Celtics to me. Like, watching that, it was not close. And they had Kyrie, they had KD, they had Seth Curry, they had most of their guys. They didn't have Ben Simmons, obviously. He was catching rebounds during pregame shoot-around or whatever he was doing. But they were terrible. It's not like they got that much better than that sweep from the Celtics. So, beyond the chemistry, what we're talking about, you have to look at past success. Kyrie has not had any success in the playoffs in 5 years. 5 seasons. Nobody talks about that, man. He's just Kyrie the GOAT ball handler. Kyrie, look at this guy. He's so skilled. He's the most skilled guard ever in NBA history. Be better without LeBron in the playoffs. Be better without LeBron. And then I will maybe start to agree.
Ooh, that's true. He has looked suspect in the playoffs.
I don't even think that's spicy, man. He's honestly been so rough.
Yeah.